Hi, we are going to go ahead and get started. Once again, my name is Jonah Lastley from Auburn University. I'm an instructional technology specialist in the Innovation and Research Commons, which is a space that is dedicated to multimedia and expanded learning. We have an Adobe Creative Space, which is primarily where myself and my colleague Chelsea Hooper, who is joining us today, work. We also have an audio recording studio. We have technology lending with cameras and other audio visual equipment. We have a data space and then a maker space that are all under the Innovation and Research Commons umbrella. And so today we're just going to be having a little discussion about workshops and instructional events and how we generate our content and how we evaluate the workshops and the feedback we get. As I'm going along, please feel free to post any questions that you have in chat. We're more than happy to answer them, and we want this to be more of a discussion rather than a presentation. So if you have anything to add, feel free to post it in chat, or it doesn't bother me if you unmute yourself and just start talking. With that being said, we can go ahead and get started. I will be working off of this Adobe Express page. I will post the link in chat if you would like to view it. It has a lot of information about the whole Innovation and Research Commons and Adobe space and kind of what we're all about. But we will be going down to the workshop section. So right now at Auburn, we offer, I would say, close to 10 workshops per semester, and we base those on needs assessments. And so since Chelsea and I mainly work in the Adobe Creative space, most of our workshops stem from the Adobe products like Photoshop, Illustrator, InDesign. But then there are also needs outside of that. We don't just work within Adobe. So Chelsea frequently does workshops on poster design and presentation because that is a big need for grad students and undergrads alike. And so we can pull up our workshop flyer. So just a little bit of some of the the workshops we offered this past semester. So getting started with Adobe Creative Cloud Express and Adobe Stock. Auburn is an Adobe Creative campus, so students have access to the full Adobe suite with their tuition. This past semester, we also offered basics of manual photography with the DSLR cameras coming from Tech Lending. So that was branching out with another facet of the Innovation and Research Commons to use some of their equipment for our workshops and to cross-promote the different services. We have designing documents in InDesign. We also have book our workshops in series. So we'll have some beginners series workshops, like Photoshop for beginners. And then later on, depending on our schedule for the semester and what else needs to be offered, we may offer a more advanced version of the workshop where we go more in depth into either a specific aspect of a program or just cover a more in-depth broad range of a program. So we did Photoshop, Adobe Premiere Rush, and then later on in this semester, we did Premiere Pro for those who wanted a more in-depth view into video editing. And then also, like I mentioned before, poster design and presentations. And then we also did creating mobile apps, presenting using Adobe XD. And so that's just an overview of what one semester might look like for our workshop schedule. So we try to make them programmatic and skill building. So for our beginner level workshops, it is just a broad overview of, say, what Photoshop is and some basic tools that everybody would need to know getting started, like how do you crop, how do you change some of the basic colors, how do you save out different types of files and things like that, where a more advanced version would be like masking and taking out objects and blurring backgrounds, and things like that. And so oftentimes in a semester, we have several that we run every single semester, like beginner Photoshop and Premiere Rush. Those are popular ones that every semester there is an interest in. But then outside of the few core ones, we experiment and try different workshops and different content to see what people are interested in. And if there is a specific need or request, we try and incorporate that in as well. So from time to time, we have our Adobe student consultants assist. So in the Adobe Creative space, we have 10 student consultants that are available in person or over Zoom to answer questions that any patrons might have. And so from time to time, especially if it is a particularly crowded workshop, we will bring them in to assist. We offer our workshops in person and on Zoom simultaneously, so they are a hybrid style workshop. And so having a second set of hands can really help with monitoring chat and bringing attention to questions that may be posted there as the instructor is going along. And the workshops are usually fairly informal, especially if it's a smaller batch of participants. I don't have any problem kind of going off script if they have certain questions that they have that aren't necessarily in line with the strict flow of the workshop that we had planned out. But we do have recordings available on demand. So we record every workshop, but then we have set versions of them that are posted on our website, and we don't update them every time we offer a new workshop, because we want to be able to track continual use data of people going to our website and viewing our workshops. So if somebody wants the link to a specific recording from a workshop this past semester, we are more than happy to get that to them, but this semester's recording won't be the one that's listed on the website for all of the students to go and find. And then once our workshops are done, we have a workshop feedback survey. We always want to hear what patrons think of our workshops and how we can improve. We offer our workshops in a computer lab that have the Adobe suite on them, so our students can work and follow along, or just listen and take notes to try on their own later. And then lastly, we use a registration system so we can get a rough idea about how many participants are going to be joining ahead of time, so that we can know how many we're expecting and when we can go and get started, or if we should wait for some more to show up. So that is a brief run through of how we do our workshops here at Auburn. Did you have anything you'd like to add, Chelsea?
That was great. And they're going to laugh because I want to move from one screen to another magically and appear. We're in the same room, and so we can close it off and not be interrupted. So yeah, Jonah did a great job doing an overview. I would say also we have done some custom workshops like for student groups and stuff. So like we went over to our new venture accelerator, which is like a startup area for entrepreneurship, and did a real specific one on logo design for them. We did a session for the Weagle. We have a student radio station here, and they have over 50 DJs, and they create their own shows, and their advisors wanted the students to create their own logos for their own shows and then give them that content for their website. So we worked with them on that. The Plainsman is our student edited newsletter that goes out, and they wanted some more specific, like how do we make our graphics better? So we did a session with them, and then also just try to partner with other student groups like our Women in Technology group from the Business Center. We did a custom session for them too, based upon what they wanted. But yeah, we tag team on the workshops too. There are certain topics Jonah's better at than I am, and so we kind of take turns with the different sessions, and that allows us to get a little bit more in depth with some of those topics. So that's super helpful. Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to open it up to more of the roundtable discussion with some questions. So if you want to post in chat, do you offer workshops at your current institution? If so, are they offered in person or online, or are they hybrid where you're doing a Zoom recording or a Zoom session, but also presenting to a room full of people at the same time.
There's a couple of questions in chat we could get to too, maybe.
Oh, okay. I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
no, you're good. So while y'all are kind of typing in chat your response to that question, we're happy to answer some of the ones. I'm glad you're eager to ask questions.
Yeah.
So let's see, workshops, are they always well attended, or do you sometimes have zero? Good question. Are university and faculty staff allowed to attend? Do you work with instructors? Yeah, so we can answer some of those questions.
Yeah.
You want to start with attendance?
Yes,
Okay.
so it's really hit or miss on workshops. Sometimes we do have zero. On a good semester, I won't have any with zero, but there might be some with one or two. This past spring, I actually had a couple in a row that had zero attendance. But university faculty and staff are allowed to attend. We gear our content mostly towards students, just in our marketing, but everybody is allowed to attend. And I actually have a lot of university administrators attending the workshops to learn more about, especially for like Photoshop or Illustrator, to learn more about creating little graphics for their department, or even Premiere Rush for videos for the department. So everyone is allowed to attend, and we do work with instructors to categorize instructional sessions for classes differently than our workshops. We do work with instructors on an individual basis to create curriculum or presentations for their class that would be tailored towards certain assignments that are only open towards that class and not the broader Auburn community. But we will also point them towards recordings that we have on our website to give their students as prep, but we're also more than happy to do individual sessions.
Yeah, that's a good point, because a lot of times we end up using our workshop recordings just as curriculum content for them, and they're happy to use it because they're like, this is already done, and so we offer that to them. We host those, by the way, in Panopto, which is our university's official video storage, and only Auburn community members can get to those recordings. So that's kind of how we contain them. But then they're open to any of them to embed into their Canvas page and so on. So that's a great question. I would say also sometimes when we get instructional sessions requests, we might end up turning that into a workshop, because if it's like a really cool topic, or we're like, hey, other people could benefit from that, then that might become a regular workshop as well. So good question. Okay, so Heaven's got a question. How do you outreach your workshops? Do students reach out to you for workshops? Yeah. Do you want to do the first part of that question? I'll do the second part.
Yeah.
How do you outreach your workshops?
So we do signage within the library. We have digital signage and sandwich boards. We have a big 7-panel, we call it the digital wall, digital display that we will put our workshop flyers on. And we also have an email list that Chelsea can probably talk to more, that anyone who's ever signed up for a workshop or contacted us about anything Adobe is on that list. And so they will get emailed the list of workshops that's going out for the semester. So it's a pretty wide net that goes out.
It's tough to do. I'm sure you guys understand. And if you have ways that you do outreach that we have not mentioned, please put in the chat and share, because we all know this is a struggle getting the word out. The students are hit with so many things in so many different directions. But yeah, anyone who contacts us for an instructional session, or anybody who attends any of our workshops, goes on a manual distribution list that I keep and maintain. And then I try to use that as a snowball effect and say, hey, share with your friends and all this kind of stuff. We do have some Adobe student ambassadors who share information out on their Instagram too. And we try to put digital signage in other locations too, like the academic buildings as well. And they're usually pretty good about posting our stuff because they know we're helping students and all of that. And also official news, whatever official campus news we can use to get out. And I would say, yes, students do reach out to us for workshops. We sometimes will direct them to, hey, here's our upcoming workshops. If they're over, then we say, here's the recordings. But then we also have our consultants who can work with them one-on-one. And the consultants are aware of the recordings and know how to recommend them to people as well. And like the student groups I mentioned, the radio station students reached out to me for that and said, we'd like for you to do a session for our group. And then the Plainsman students heard about it from the Weagle students, and then they wanted a session too. So yeah, sometimes students reach out to us so they can either see a consultant one-on-one and get started with some videos, or if there's enough interest, we can create a whole nother workshop and so on. I'll toss the link to the digital wall in the chat so you guys get an idea of what that is.
And so Chad says, pre-COVID, we had in-person library research workshops in person. Now we are trying to build a hybrid multimedia workshop program. That is the case here. And I feel like that's the case at a lot of institutions where it was all in person or occasionally all online, but now trying to build that hybrid integration so you can meet patrons where they're at has been a big push. And it's also been a struggle to learn how to, for me personally, to learn how to teach in that hybrid environment with students asking questions on chat or in the lab. So that for me has been a challenge, but has gotten easier after a couple of years of doing that and getting used to that. And yes, we do work with courses to integrate the Adobe products into their projects, into their classes, and that is more of on a one-on-one basis.
Yeah, on this same presentation that we've shared with you, there's a section here called instructional sessions, and that goes more into depth about that. Yeah, and I tossed the link to the digital wall in there so you can see that. That's a place we can display stuff as well. And we also display student work there too. Jonah works on that digital wall because it requires like a real technical background to be able to manipulate it and get the things to show up on the screen the way you want. But we worked out a workflow to display student work on there. So now students go by and they see stuff and they're like, hey, this kid did that. I could do that too. So that's another way to just kind of get the word out. Somebody asked about social media. So yeah, there is social media for our library. And then we do have an outreach coordinator within the Innovation and Research Commons, which is our larger department. And she has access to the library's social media. So we used to have different departmental social media before you came. We had that like 3 years ago or something like that. And then they canceled that and decided to put it all together in one library social media. So now our outreach coordinator has the ability to access the library social media, and we can give her posts and she can post stuff and put it into a schedule. So we do have like a channel for that, but there's not much of a social media audience that's seeing that. So we do what we can, but yeah, that's how it is. Yeah.
For a number of participants, for me personally, if it is over 10, I think that's a good day of attendance. Really 8 or higher is pretty good.
I agree.
And it depends on the weather outside. Like if it's raining, that's going to push down attendance even online. So I've found there's a lot of things that can affect how many people come, but if it's 10 to 15, I would say that is a pretty solid attendance.
I would agree with that as well.
Do you want to talk a little bit about how we became an Adobe campus, because you were more involved with that process?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I've been here for 4 years, and Jonah joined us a year and a half ago. Yeah, so right when I was hired actually as part to help out with gaining more instructional resources in a computer lab in our library. And then it was called the Media and Digital Resource Lab. So you guys might have had a similar setup a while ago, where you basically have like a computer lab that's centrally located, probably in your library, where students could access software that they couldn't access other places on campus. So that's where this Innovation and Research Commons started. Before it was the INRC, it was the Media and Digital Resource Lab. And then a month after I was hired, we became an Adobe Creative Campus. There was a committee that was formed. It was mostly through the provost office was the main supporter of it. And so there was an IT person in the provost office who was the main champion, and they developed a committee. They included the Center for Teaching and Learning people, also various sort of stakeholders across campus. And then the provost office committed to providing the funding for student licenses for the Adobe Creative Campus. So we started with just student licenses. That's essentially what we have now. Our faculty can get access with a discount, but their department has to pay for sort of the difference of that discount in order to get access. So that's one barrier I would not recommend adding. If you're going to get it, just get it for everybody. If you're going to make people's pay, then make staff pay, because they're used to paying for software and that sort of thing. And if the goal is to promote digital literacy, then you focus on people who are teaching and learning, students and faculty. Yeah, so you can work with Adobe. They'll meet you where you are. They'll help you out. They customize it. So get in touch with Adobe Education, or get in touch with one of us who's an Adobe Creative Campus, and we can get you in touch with Adobe if you're interested in that. But that's helped us out a lot, because we know the students have access to this, and we know they need help learning it. So it's an easy in for us to fill that gap. You know, when we first became an Adobe Creative Campus, there was no plan for that. I also wouldn't recommend that either, right? But but fortunate for us, we're able to step in and do that, and then also expand into the rest of the Innovation and Research Commons with different things. Yeah.
So we offer probably 8 to 10 standard workshops each semester. That's not including our instructional sessions that we do for classes, or the spin-offs like for the Plainsman or the radio station. Do we have a total number of attendees roughly?
If you give me a minute, I might be able to actually pull that up over the course of the year. So we can come back to that question. That would be cool.
Okay. We do not have any direct collaboration with the Adobe Digital Studio at Clemson's library, but we are always open to collaborating on projects of any sort. And for timeline on the classes, I think we found that it's easiest to try and pick a set time that our workshops always are. Yes, we are going to miss some students that have classes at that time, but at a previous institution, we were always changing the times when we had workshops, and it was hard to pin down a set schedule, or like a set time for attendance, to really know when the best time for everybody was. And we don't offer them in the mornings typically, but that's something we're always looking into, of when that set time, what set time would be best. And for faculty, we've been involved with the Center for Teaching and Learning and their new faculty orientation. So when new faculty members arrive, they come and they get a tour of the Innovation and Research Commons, and we let them know about the Adobe creative space and everything that they have access to. And if they want to follow up with us, we've had a number of faculty make appointments to learn more, and then have us integrated or embedded into their courses.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. So also, yeah, we'll do specific ones with our Center for Teaching and Learning. So I've actually just finalized a couple of dates, which I haven't told you yet. Just did that today, for spring. And so trying to capture like the beginning of the semester people. We also are embedded in our Center for Teaching and Learning's course redesign. And that's been really helpful. So faculty who are interested in adding more innovative teaching practices to their courses can then they can sort of join the Adobe cohort. So it's kind of like we have a strand inside of the Center for Teaching and Learning area, so that we can pop in, and they're happy to have us come over, and we're great partners with them. And that's been really helpful. So yeah, I totally recommend special workshops, because when you can angle it just to faculty, you can be a lot more specific and help them out. Okay.
And so as for hiring additional staff, I was brought on to help with the growing need for workshops, and also the growing need for additional support in the other areas of Innovation and Research Commons. But also, since we became a creative campus, we've also hired the student consultants to assist with that growing need as well.
Somebody asked for numbers, so I finally got those. So in last year, so when I had Jonah with me for like half a year, it was about 630 attendees total between our workshops and our instructional sessions. That's like actually people in the seats, like not registrants, but actually attendees. And then over this past year, when I pulled the numbers for our annual report, which runs from like October to the following September, so that's more recent numbers. With both of us, we know, teaching and working together, like for that entire time, it was like 1,700 attendees. So people we affected, either they were actually in an instructional class that we taught and team taught with a teacher, or attended a workshop. And then we also have statistics on like how many interactions there were with our consultants and so on. And that number has gone up as well. It started out being like maybe about 50 per semester, and then we were up to maybe 150 per semester now, but just continually looking to improve those numbers. But hopefully that gives you an idea. That was whoever asked. Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of outreach numbers, we definitely get a lot more on the instructional sessions that are for specific classes, because you can have a freshman lecture class of 70 plus students that are still being affected and learning about our existence, and then hopefully that translates into them coming for further development at the workshops and reaching out for more skills training. So a follow-up question, if you offer workshops, do you offer recordings that are available after the fact? Do you link to separate recordings like we do that are preset sessions, or maybe recordings of more video style, like hands-on walkthroughs of what the workshops cover? Or do you link to external training like YouTube videos or other resources that might cover the same material?
So I'm at UNC Chapel Hill, and we're kind of struggling because we don't have a really good way to do a hybrid class, online and in person, because we really don't have a good lab setup. So ours are usually either we do it all online and we do it through Zoom, and we then put those up in Panopto, or we tend to just have them in-house. So I'd really like to hear, how you're doing the hybrid classes, and how well they've been going.
So right now we're currently in the lab that we used to teach. It has a webcam with Zoom available, and I think there are 43 computers that are all fairly powerful. I wouldn't say they could render out like strong After Effects videos or lots of video rendering, but they work well enough for Photoshop and even some basic Premiere Pro workshops. So, and with the nice classroom camera and classroom microphone, we are able to do this on Zoom and also teach in person. And it does take some getting used to answering questions from both audience online and in person. But over time, I found it becomes a lot more natural. The first probably 3 workshops, I was very uncomfortable trying to manage the back and forth between the 2 groups.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily because of that. It's not necessarily bad that you do some on Zoom, all online or all in person. And so people just swear by that and just do it that way anyway, and then just offer it both ways. When we did our course redesign session with Video Center, they offered one entire session in person and one entire session online. They did not try to do hybrid. So it kind of depends, but for most things we can do hybrid because we're, everything's digital that we're working through. So it's okay, but it does take a little, it takes a little bit of practice and the infrastructure. And I will say also, we have a very supportive dean. So our dean of libraries came in after we were in Adobe Creative Campus, but she saw the work that we were doing and the fact that it was getting people into the library. Because you guys know, if you work in libraries, your programming is critical to bring people in. And then hopefully while they're here, they try other things or they come back and all of that, right? So she was very supportive. And at the beginning, we did not have a space that could really teach with Adobe Creative Cloud. We had laptops that wouldn't even run Photoshop really. Like you could open it, but you couldn't do anything because of the processing. So we presented that as a problem. And up until that point, we were bring your own, which is a mess too. You guys know this because they might have different versions or whatever, don't have it downloaded and all that kind of stuff. And so we said, hey, we're doing all these workshops. We need a space. And she approved, the purchase of this lab, and it was time for it to be renovated anyway. And so this is actually a library instructional lab that we share with the rest of the library. So it's not just our space, it's for everybody, it's for any library faculty or staff to use who is teaching a session. Anybody can book the space and teach with it, but this is the only lab that has desktop machines that are powerful enough. The other labs, we have 2 more labs, and both of them are laptops. But see, for the other things like, information literacy, they just need web. So they don't need a whole lot of powerful computers. So it worked out for us. And we're lucky that we have some infrastructure and nice facility to use. Yeah.
But we do have a few workshops that are not able to be offered online, like the one I did in collaboration with our technology lending on the DSLR cameras. That is the first half is a kind of overview of manual photography and some of the controls on the cameras. And then the second half is hands-on with the cameras, handing them out to the students so they can play around with them and really get a sense of how they work. And so that one just does not really lend itself to being an online workshop. And so not everything is going to work for every situation. Somebody mentioned it earlier in the chat, asking who if we opened up our workshops to faculty and staff as well. So just asking for y'all, who is the primary target? Are you kind of like us and primarily targeted to students, but anybody affiliated with your institution is more than welcome to attend? Do you do some workshops that are more tailored towards staff and faculty? I would love to hear from y'all just about who your target audience is for your space.
Well, I'll jump in since it's quiet. The target audience is always going to be students first, but there are instructors that need help to get over hurdles so that they can utilize the resources that they've asked us to offer the students so that they know what they're talking about. So, we encourage people who aren't even doing a particular project for a class to come in just to learn. And so, I guess I'm sort of getting off topic because you're specifically doing workshops that don't have anything really to do with your resources, right? Because like you offer VR headsets, I think I saw, and laser cutter and all of that. You don't do workshops on those. Those are just you do Adobe only.
Yeah. So we are positioned mainly in the Adobe creative space. So that's my main role. I did help develop the Innovation and Research Commons in general. I've helped put together the 50-page proposal for it and all of that. But we have 4 other staff members who are in charge of those various areas. And so my main role is in the Adobe creative space. I help instruction wise a little bit in some of those other spaces, but I'm not the main person over those other spaces. And then Jonah, his position is 50% the Adobe creative space. And then the other 50% are other areas in the Innovation and Research Commons, which he got to basically determine based upon his interests and our needs. And his other main focus is, I would say, the digital wall. And then also the tech lending. He's been helping with some of the workshops there for tech lending and all of that. So we would love for those other areas to also offer workshops, but they are not necessarily within our purview. We are all colleagues at the same level. So we don't have authority over anybody else in the space,
I
except
gotcha.
our students, our own students, right? So we would love for that to happen. And I think that's super important. And if there are other people here in the chat today who can talk to workshops you do with physical machines like that, to share with Ken, I think that would be fantastic, because I think doing those, somebody else mentioned in a session yesterday, doing orientations on every single piece of equipment before
That was-
anybody's allowed to use it.
That was me.
Yeah, I'm a fan of that. I think that's great.
And it has been requested that we do expand the
Mhm.
range of workshops, and
Yes.
that's kind of one of my goals going forward, since some of them are a little hesitant to present. I don't mind getting up in front of the students and talking about things. So like I just started small with tech lending, and some of the cameras, I'm going to try and do an additional one with tech lending this spring, but starting to break down
Yeah.
those walls. And also
Yeah.
the space is still developing, and so some of the areas haven't really been in a position as quickly to offer workshops. So that's an area that we're trying to grow into.
Mhm.
Okay,
I'm glad
so
you
then,
brought that up.
well, I would like to circle back then to, so you are an isolated pocket focusing on Adobe, right?
Yes, and
And-
in other multimedia kind of as needed, any sort of digital media, we tend to focus more on Adobe because that's what students have free access to. But of course, if somebody wants to know about Final Cut Pro or, Logic, we have a student who also knows Logic, we'll help with other multimedia, but I would say digital media
Mhm.
is basically our focus. And with Jonah also working on the digital wall to help, put things on there, that's a good fit. So yeah, we're kind of a pocket inside of the Innovation and Research Commons. That's a good way to describe it.
So this is my question. Where does the research come in? Do you see a lot of research happening with the use of the Adobe products?
That's a good question. So I actually got this question not too long ago. We're kind of also starting with kind of piggybacking on our course redesign and starting a cohort there. We have sort of a faculty learning community around Adobe. And this question came up actually this semester. And we have several faculty who are interested in maybe studying digital literacy within their courses, and what happens when I integrate Adobe. Does digital literacy improve? And how much, and that sort of thing. So we're kind of just starting to venture into that. Adobe has some research that's available that you could use. They did a research study with Civitas with, I think it was University of San Antonio was in on it, ETSU was in on it, and another university, I forget who they were, but there were 3 of them. And they did studies on, we incorporated Adobe Creative Cloud in these classes, but not these classes, and they were comparable. What were the results, and they realized that there was increased re-enrollment, less attrition, and increased GPAs. They had like 4 or 5 outcomes that were positive. So if you're looking for research to use, then Adobe has some. And then also we've been researching some digital literacy tools and gathering those together. And we have several that are kind of, that are normed that we found that we will probably be using, some myself probably in a class next year, and then, or next semester. And then also I have a couple of faculty who may do one together and use one of those digital literacy normed tools. It's basically a quantitative questionnaire. And so, and also a little, I think there's some qualitative, questions in there as well. Yeah, so we're just starting to do some of that type of research, but for now I would say it's anecdotal. Like people tell us they love it, and the students are definitely more engaged in class and they're creating, so it must be good for them.
And they are using it to visualize the research that they've done. So maybe not using it to conduct the research per se, but whether it's creating a nature documentary after a biology class, or synthesizing everything in a social work infographic. It's being used to show off the research that is being done and make it more presentable and accessible for everyone to take that in.
Jonah put together a great display. We have a course in scientific illustration where they use Adobe Creative Cloud to draw specimens, and their instructor is an entomologist, but also has a background in art. So he's a bit of a unicorn, but it's fantastic fit. And I can toss some of the images in the chat in just a minute. But he's teaching them how to use art as scientists. So that's a fantastic spot. And then you fielded a question not too long ago from the researcher who wanted to use Photoshop to analyze like the number of pixels.
Oh,
If you want to talk about
yes.
that just a minute.
So there was a grad student who was analyzing soil saturation, and it was a rough approximate, but she had used dye to saturate soil, and she needed to use Photoshop to convert the blue dye in the brown soil into a black and white image, and then count the number of pixels of each color to determine the total approximate soil saturation. So I was able to help her manipulate those images and get that information. Now, that wasn't like a precise scientific measurement, but that's not what she was looking for with that tool. So one question that I have for you, if you offer workshops, is where do you source the ideas for your workshop? Is it based on just you see a need for a number of students coming in and asking a certain question over and over? Do you follow topics in the industry and you see something cool like at well, I'm just thinking about Adobe Max for us since we're an Adobe Creative Campus, but other conferences, do you see other universities, workshops and ideas? So what are some of the places you source your ideas from, and how do you decide what workshops you will be offering?
Off the endangered species list and move to extinct. There's a lot of conflict around this decision, since taking those species off the list would cut funding to restoration and management projects for them if they were still alive, but it would free up those funds for other endangered species that we know are still around. Besides the large collection of Alabama mussels on that list, the other thing that had caught my eye was the number of
I don't know what that was.
Oh.
Y'all can post in chat too.
Yeah.
If you'd rather not unmute, that's okay to post in chat. Where do you get your ideas for workshops? I know, right? Mysterious audio. Or we can go on to another question.
Yeah.
Okay, I can pitch in.
Yay, peer pressure.
I just don't want to be the only one talking and let
I understand.
other people have a chance. But so we're fortunate to have a multimedia teaching and learning librarian who is really aware of what's going on around campus, and he will pull in experts on a particular topic, possibly from within the campus and sometimes from without the campus. And so we have workshops every week that spotlight a different topic. We're not like consistently doing the same thing over and over again. And part of that is because, as we discussed yesterday, we do orientations on just about everything that we have that's really complicated. So that's almost like workshops, but they're not workshops. The workshops are they'll range from everything from how to solder, like if you're creating little microphones or contact microphones, or how to do animation, how to use open source software. It varies. So yeah, we have someone who is actually specifically like looking around and finding what would be the best topic.
That's really nice.
And pulling in the right person to or people to present that.
Yes, for us, we're kind of the person that looks around to see what's going on, and then we're the person that has to learn it to at least to learn it well enough to present it back. But sometimes it does feel like throwing spaghetti at a wall to see what sticks. We come up with an idea that we think will be great and super popular, and then it's really frustrating when you come up with a new one and that's a 0 attendance day. And it's like, is it because it's raining or because nobody actually wanted this workshop? So it can take a few cycles to see what is and isn't a viable topic. But we also source it from questions we get at the service desk, like a number of you are saying in the chat.
When software changes, that's a good point, Lynn. Yeah, so, and a lot of times, like, it may look like we do some stuff over and over again, but a lot of times it's slightly different, because even if we do Photoshop again, we're incorporating like, what are the new features of it? And so we do have sort of like a standard recording that's basic, and we know what's in it. So it gives students a good base in it, and we're comfortable with that. But then like the live ones, like you said, we may go off script, you know, or go a certain direction if somebody asks, or incorporate the new things that have come out and the features and so on. Requests from students and instructors, as Lynn said, for sure. Heaven says, we try to form our workshops from questions you get at the service desk, right? So part of this might be making sure you have a way to intake those, right? So we use lib answers. Some of you may use that as well. But whatever kind of way you can take in interactions or requests from your service desk, then that way you've got that data to look back on. And our consultants will tell us too, they'll be like, hey, so-and-so keeps asking for such and such or whatever. And sometimes it's, you know, curated and very specific, like here's what you specifically need because of that question. And we wouldn't call that a workshop, you know, because that's a one-on-one type thing, but you're still curating all of that information. Yeah.
Sometimes you can trace it back. So if there's a bunch of one type of question, it's like, where's this coming from? Is that coming from a class that got an assignment that we didn't know about, and then need to go back and just contact that professor and reach out and try and get in front of the class the next semester, the next time it's offered? Or is it something that's just multiple people from different areas of campus having the same issue / question and pulling from that? Yes, we use most of the lib apps quite heavily in the library.
And also they're library wide, so our statistics are pulled from the big, you know, all the library. So our interactions also count towards sort of the big live bucket, as Heaven calls it. For sure.
So here's another question. How do you evaluate the workshops that you present? So we have the workshop survey that we try and push out at the end of every workshop. But also on top of that, I would just say I can usually have a gut feeling after a workshop is over, whether I think it went well or went poorly, and whether that was my fault for being off presenting, or maybe the content or the topic needs to be reworked some. So what are some of the tools / methods that y'all use for evaluating your workshops, whether that's individually or as a whole body of workshops / what's the word, project or service? Yeah. Online course feedback form. Yes. Yeah.
That's true.
Sometimes it seems like the ones that felt, oh, yes.
Oh, go ahead. And then I have a question I was going to ask.
Yeah, you go ahead.
So one of the things we've done here at UNC is we've become integrated with the English 105 class that all freshmen have to take. And I was wondering if that's something that a lot of places are starting to look at, to add, like either using Adobe or creating things either visually or through podcasts or videos or things like that.
I know that is becoming more prevalent I came from UT Chattanooga, and all of the English classes required a multimodal component. And almost all of the professors went through the studio to have one of the studio librarians get in front of their students. Right now, I don't think we are required to be in front of any classes, and some of those English classes at Auburn would be too much for two people to get in front of all of them.
Right. It's definitely a challenge. It's definitely something we would like to work on. I've been trying to work with first year English for like 3 years, but just can't seem to get through because maybe they're overloaded or they think it's going to be a lot more work for them when it's really going to be less work for them. But I do have a little bit of hope because we have a new College of Liberal Arts dean, and he came from another Adobe Creative Campus. So I've actually just met with him last week, and we're going to try to make some inroads on that. And sometimes like this may be your situation too, with some of those core courses you want to try to get embedded in. There are many chefs in the pot that you have to deal with. So provost office might have a hand in it. Your, whatever college that it happens to be in may have a hand in it. They may need to alert some of the other colleges who cross-list that course, whose program requires that core component, and sort of get approval. Or, when you change something like that, that's been the same way for a long time. Sometimes it takes forever to kind of make some inroads there, but hopefully by working, sort of higher top down, than instead of us trying to get in on the bottom floor, then maybe we can make some progress in there. And our goal would be like to include a multimodal component, like have one assignment that lets them use Adobe Express, for example. Or for some of you guys, it might be do one activity in the makerspace or something that relates to this particular assignment. You make something that includes, your curriculum and so on. So yeah, we would like to do that more often. Or if there's a module we could build that would automatically be within there, so the TAs don't really have to do much, it's pretty easy for them. Those would be things we would want to work towards. Yeah, that's a great point and a good question for sure.
Hey, if I could chime in there real quick. One of the things we've struggled with over the years is, we'll have like a history professor that says, hey, y'all need to make a video for, say, my history, 111 class or whatever, and pedagogically, he or she is not actually teaching video production in the class, yet they are assessing them on the quality of the video, not of the content. And so that's one of the areas where, we're kind of conflicted. We also have been, kind of put on the spot to kind of help someone create a better video when they're actually not teaching. That's not on the syllabus for the class, right? So how do you negotiate those sorts of things with the faculty, and to kind of temper their expectations, because, a lot of our faculty these days tend to think, well, they were born with an iPhone, so now they're automatically the next YouTube star, so how, there's just trying to temper expectations, but also trying to align, their assessment mechanisms with the actual learning objectives of the course, and not trying to make, since they aren't actually teaching video production in the history class. So
yeah, that's a very good point. I think we both helped classes with video. And I would say that is something I try to address, like say, how are you planning on assessing this? Or here's a rubric that you might consider, using, or you might have your students help develop that rubric in class. That's another great way to get them to do it. But a lot of times our approach is we'll help them with the technical pieces, and you really need to focus on what's the content of the video. So that should be mostly what your rubric is made of, or what your assessment is taking into consideration, and just try to encourage them in that way. We have a good relationship with Center for Teaching and Learning, and so if we need to pull in somebody else from there, we can do that. So I would say that's another way that we do it. But I haven't run into that too much, where they've expected the students to do this fantastic, highly produced video. I think we've had a pretty, they've had a pretty decent idea of what should be in that video and what are some, things to include in that. So other thoughts?
I think using the phrase temper expectations is the right thing. So just in that first initial conversation, try and get an idea of what they have in their head, and then kind of talk with them about what's realistically possible. Like a 10-minute video is the equivalent of a massive research paper by the time you get all of that content in there. So just trying to say, like, what is, like Chelsea said, what is really the goal of this project? And it's like, how would this amount of work on an assignment compare to anything else, like a paper, or presentation, or poster, or anything like that? So just kind of work with them to see what they're really after in their goals. And that takes some conversations, but I haven't really run into too many issues where there was unreconcilable, the expectations that they had.
Yeah, I feel like most of the faculty are pretty happy for us to handle the technical pieces and answer questions about how to do their video. And they're happy to be focused on the content of it. And we've had to walk some people through, like, hey, you should make them storyboard it. You should make them turn that into you first, and you need to go over the content. So we walk people through things like that. But yeah, fortunately, we haven't really experienced where somebody's like, oh, this transition is horrible, so I'm going to give them an F or whatever, because, because of the quality of it and that sort of thing. Most people are understanding that it's a learning process. And if this is the first video they've ever made, then gosh, yeah.
I did have one professor who I think had higher expectations for the group as a whole, but then once the projects came in, and she was disappointed, but also for what was being asked, I don't think they were too bad. And then she graded fairly based on the group as a whole. So it's like they might have been all what she thought was a C, but then realized that they all came in around that level and was able to rate them, and wanted to change up the way we did the instruction and worked with them going forward.
That's a good example. Yeah. If you can also have examples of other videos you've worked with other classes, like, hey, we helped this one do the 7-minute documentary, but guess what? It was an entire semester project and that was it. Or we did this 3-minute thesis video, but again, that was a semester long project because it was focused on their research and so on, and really a high level because it was going to be in their portfolio and kind of get them internships and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, that's a good question. And topic to raise. If you guys have other random topics like that come to your mind or questions, feel free to ask.
Yeah, we are almost out of time. So if anybody has any other questions or helpful comments for the group, please feel free to unmute yourself or post them in the chat. Yes, I agree. We kind of break them all into those different buckets. And so
yeah, I feel like we probably throw around workshop too much, or something when we mean something slightly different or whatever. Yeah.
You're welcome. Thank you all for coming. This has been a lot of fun and great to hear some feedback and just some ideas on how other places are doing.
Ooh, some of the workshops Ken's doing, let's see, composing with code, video edits, social media, nice. Video premiere for artists, videos, podcasts, and nice.
Ooh.
Those are great options.
Yeah,
Ken.
I would be interested in that Blender VFX one.
Cool.
Gotcha.
Those are not organizations, right? Those are involved for sure. Those are my notes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for participating, and I hope y'all have a great rest of your day.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it very much.
Bye.
Thanks, y'all.